Chapter 12. Special Problems in Labor Markets. The promotion of economic equality and the alleviation of poverty are distinct and often conflicting. Peter Bauer. Although the basic economic principles underlying the allocation of labor are not fundamentally different from the principles underlying the allocation of inanimate resources, it is not equally easy to look at labor and its pay rates in the same way one looks at the prices of iron ore or bushels of wheat. Moreover, we are concerned about the conditions where people work, in a way that we are not concerned about the conditions where machinery is used or where raw materials are processed, except insofar as these conditions affect people. Other issues that arise with labor that do not arise with inanimate factors of production include job security, collective bargaining, occupational licensing, and questions about whether labor is exploited in any of the various meanings of that word. The statistics that measure what is happening in labor markets also present special problems that are not present when considering statistics about inanimate factors of production. The unemployment rate is one example. Unemployment statistics. The unemployment rate is a very important statistic as an indicator of the health of the economy and society. But for that very reason, it is necessary to know the limitations of such statistics. Because human beings have volition and make choices, unlike inanimate factors of production, many people choose not to be in the labor force at a given time and place. They may be students, retired people, or housewives who work in their own homes, taking care of their families, but are not on any employer's payroll. Children below some legally specified age are not even allowed to be gainfully employed at all. Those people who are officially counted as unemployed are people who are in the labor force, seeking employment but not finding it. Patients in hospitals, people serving in the military forces, and inmates of prison are also among those people who are not counted as part of the labor force. While unemployment statistics can be very valuable, they can also be misleading if their definitions are not kept in mind. The unemployment rate is based on what percentage of the people who are in the labor force are not working. However, people's choices as to whether or not to be in the labor force at any given time means that unemployment rates are not wholly objective data, but vary with choices made differently under different conditions and varying from country to country. Although the unemployment rate is supposed to indicate what proportion of the people in the labor force do and do not have jobs, sometimes the unemployment rate goes down while the number of people without jobs is going up. The reason is that a prolonged recession or depression may lead some people to stop looking for a job after many long and futile searches. Since such people are no longer counted as being in the labor force, their exodus will reduce the unemployment rate, even if the proportion of people without jobs has not been reduced at all. In the wake of the downturn of the American economy in the early 21st century, the unemployment rate rose to just over 10%. Then the unemployment rate began to decline, as more and more people stopped looking for jobs, and thus dropped out of the labor force. The labor force participation rate declined to levels not seen in decades. Although some saw the declining unemployment rate as an indication of the success of government policies, much of that decline represented people who had simply given up looking for jobs and subsisted on resources provided by various government programs. For example, more than 3.7 million workers went on Social Security disability payments from the middle of 2009 to early 2013, the fastest enrollment pace ever, according to Investor's Business Daily. Rather than relying solely on the unemployment rate, an alternative way of measuring unemployment is to compare what percentage of the adult population outside of institutions, colleges, the military, hospitals, prisons, etc., are working, This avoids the problem of people who have given up looking for work not being counted as unemployed, even if they would be glad to have a job if they thought there was any reasonable chance of finding one. In the first half of 2010, for example, while the unemployment rate remained steady at 9.5%, the proportion of the non-institutional adult population with jobs continued a decline that was the largest in more than half a century. The fact that more people were giving up looking for jobs kept the official unemployment rate from rising to reflect the increased difficulty of finding a job. Things become more complicated when comparing different countries. For example, The Economist magazine found that more than 80% of the male population between the ages of 15 and 64 were employed in Iceland, but fewer than 70% were in France. Any number of things could account for such differences. Not only are there variations from country to country in the number of people going to college, but there are also variations in the ease or difficulty with which people qualify for government benefits that would make it unnecessary for them to work, or to look for work, or to accept jobs that do not meet their hopes or expectations. High as the unemployment rate has been in France for years, French unemployment statistics tend to understate how many adults are not working. That is because the French welfare state makes it easier for senior citizens to withdraw from the labor force altogether, and unemployment rates are based on the size of the labor force. Thus, while more than 70% of people who are from 55 to 64 years of age are working in Switzerland, only 37% of the people in that same age bracket are working in France. The point here is that while people who choose not to look for work are not employed, they are also not automatically classified as unemployed. Therefore, statistics on employment rates and unemployment rates do not necessarily move in opposite directions. Both rates can rise at the same time, or fall at the same time, depending on how easy or how difficult it is for people to live without working. Unemployment compensation is one obvious way for people to live for some period of time without working. How long that time is and how generous the benefits are vary from country to country. According to The Economist, unemployment compensation in the United States pays lower benefits for less time and to a smaller share of the unemployed than in other industrialized countries. It is also true that unemployed Americans spend more time per day looking for work, more than 4 times as much time as unemployed workers in Germany, Britain, or Sweden. Even 5 years after losing his job, a sacked Norwegian worker, or Norwegian, can expect to take home almost 3/4 of what he did while employed, The Economist reported. Some other Western European countries are almost as generous for the first year after losing a job. Spain, France, Sweden, and Germany pay more than 60% of what the unemployed worker earned while working. But only in Belgium does this level of generosity continue for 5 years. In the United States, unemployment benefits usually expire after 1 year, though Congress has, at some times, extended these benefits longer. There are various kinds of unemployment, and unemployment statistics alone cannot tell you what kind of unemployment currently exists. There is, for example, what economists call frictional unemployment. People who graduate from high school or college do not always have jobs waiting for them, or find jobs the first day they start looking. Meanwhile, job vacancies remain unfilled, while there are unemployed people looking for work, because it takes time for the right employers and the right workers to find one another. If you think of the economy as a big, complex machine, then there is always going to be some loss of efficiency by social versions of internal friction. That is why the unemployment rate is never literally zero, even in boom years when employers are having a hard time trying to find enough people to fill their job vacancies. Such transient unemployment must be distinguished from long-term unemployment. Countries differ in how long unemployment lasts. A study by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development showed that, among the unemployed, those who were unemployed for a year or more constituted 9% of all unemployed in the United States, 23% in Britain, 48% in Germany, and 59% in Italy. In short, even the difference between American and European rates of unemployment as a whole understates the difference in a worker's likelihood of finding a job. Ironically, it is in countries with strong job security laws, like Germany, where it is harder to find a new job. Fewer job opportunities in such countries often take the form of fewer hours worked per year, as well as higher unemployment rates and longer periods of unemployment. One form of unemployment that has long stirred political emotions and led to economic fallacies is technological unemployment. Virtually every advance in technological efficiency puts somebody out of work. This is nothing new. By 1830, Barthélemy Thimonier, a French tailor who had long been obsessed with the idea, had patented and perfected an effective sewing machine. When 80 of his machines were making uniforms for the French army, Paris tailors, alarmed at the threat to their jobs, smashed the machines and drove Thimonier out of the city. Such reactions were not peculiar to France. In early 19th century, Britain, people called Luddites smashed machinery when they realized that the Industrial Revolution threatened their jobs. Opposition to technological efficiency, as well as other kinds of efficiency, ranging from new organizational methods to international trade, has often focused on the effects of efficiency on jobs. These are almost invariably the short-run effects on particular workers, in disregard of the effects on consumers or on workers in other fields. The rise of the automobile industry, for example, no doubt caused huge losses of employment among those raising and caring for horses, as well as among the makers of saddles, horseshoes, whips, horse-drawn carriages, and other paraphernalia associated with this mode of transportation. But these were not net losses of jobs, as the automobile industry required vast numbers of workers, as did industries producing gasoline, batteries, and car repair services, as well as other sectors of the economy catering to motorists, such as motels, fast food restaurants, and suburban shopping malls.